don't mind, to be honest, as long as people get to see this eventually. Um, yeah. So without much ado, I'm just going to try to, you know, familiarize ourselves. So, first of all, okay, I've said thank you. First person we have on the panel is Ayafa. Most of us are familiar with Ayafa. He's achieved a lot. Started debating a long while ago. Old gen slash new gen kind of. He was PDC champion in 2022, LDO champion 2019, won a host of tournaments. CAP for KDO. He's been on CSEP for PDC Council for a long while, did a lot in his time. He's won numerous Best Speaker awards, was even the Best Speaker at our just concluded Masters tournament, and it's lovely to have him here. Next up, we have Davida Paul. She's been a phenom in the space for a very long time, even before she retired from competitive debating. Was DC8 at WDC 2023, if I'm not mistaken. You could please correct me. A huge feat. She is the current CA for one of the current co-CA for PEDC 2025, and she carried yours truly at NDC 2022. That one of our panelists ended up winning. Some say that win wasn't justified, but here, who are we to say? Next person is Joy. She's also like her growth in the circuit has been meteoric, I swear. WSDC said as CAP for WSDC, WAUDC, WUDC, ANUDC, every DC you could probably think about. Just she was there, especially last year. She was there back to back to back. Hadome joins this call. It's an honor to have you. Richard Uyok, I think he's the only person that can brag that he's won this competition LDU back twice now. Yeah, there's been only 3 editions of LDU to my memory, and he's won twice. So that's serious bragging rights there. I mean, he kind of went and laid low for a while, but he also won NDC 2020 Best Speaker at NUDC. That was the first time he actually spoke. The first NUDC, he was more like a swing. But like this time around, he came and then he won Best Speaker and made it to the finals. A lot more achievements beyond all this. And then we have Olamide Olayinka. I have to take my time to read out a couple of this, to be honest. Well, let me just break it down. So she said that this is NUDC first NUDC CAP, CUDC, that's Commonwealth University Debate Championship. She also again carried yours truly to the finals of Kampala Open 2025. 336 speakers. It's not beans. You know, it's not beans, and she did well in carrying me to that tournament, and she's achieved a lot. Won a lot of best speaker best judge awards, as well as see it other tournaments. And then Raymond, you know what? At this point, I feel like this boot camp is not about praising people, so I'll just say that Raymond, as he's known for being a national champion, and yes, that's about it. Yes, NDC champion too, a crowd Open, and some other ones that he's won. But yeah, we have amazing panelists this summer. So thank you guys all for being here. I'm just going to give it over to Imole to just take over the floor from here, and then I'll come back in intermittently. Yeah.
All right. Hi, guys. Good evening. It's good to have you all here. Thank you for honoring our call, and thank you for being here. So I was saying earlier that like everybody, like Raymond already has his camera on. Even me that I'm host, I don't have camera because of NEPA. That's why I went to look at touchlight so that we can we will see each other's faces. So if you could put on your cameras, I would really appreciate that. So I, as much as it's possible, again, I'm glad that we're all here, and we want the session to be very interesting, both for our panelists and also for the people that will be listening in. It's the first time we're having a boot camp of this style, so we're just going to be asking you a couple of questions. Please feel free to be as personal as possible. Tell us your stories, give us your insights. Think of it of maybe if this was your first year in debating, or this was your first tournament, or things that you would like to hear, or things that you would like to be told. So without further ado, seeing that everyone is already here, I would start my questions. And this first question, again, I'll open it up to everyone to answer, but if you would like to take it first, kindly let us know. So the first question I have for us this evening is a very simple one. It is that when you came into debating, or when you were coming into debating, what was your main goal? If you didn't have a main goal, but then maybe along the way develop a goal, share that with us, right? But if you had a main goal coming into debating, could you please share that with us? I would like to start off the question with Raymond, as I can see his face. Then after Raymond, I would like to also ask Joy that question. So please, can you start us off, Raymond?
Hi guys, good evening. Thank you for having me. Well, so the question is if I had any goals when I was getting started with the business. I honestly did not. I think that the business sort of happened to me. I was very actively involved in competitive public speaking in the middle of COVID, and debaters were really bored at the start, and they were trying their hands at whatever they saw. So I met a handful of BP debaters at the time, at public speaking tournaments, and we kept on communicating and interacting. And I just kept on, I basically just absorbed a love for debating, ended up participating in a handful of tournaments. And it just kept on happening and happening. And here we are several years later.
All right, thank you, Raymond, for that beautiful answer. So, if you don't have like a main goal coming into debating, I'm thinking that like you didn't come in so much with the desire to maybe win a lot or become, the most decorated debater in Africa, any of those things. Like, so because you are a very driven debater, so like I'm wondering when that switch happened, or what became like the focus for every tournament you went into. Can I ask that as a follow-up question?
Well, yeah, I've always been a very competitive person. So even though like going into the getting into the circuit, I didn't have any specific goals, but I was around a lot of really talented people. They were my friends, they were the people I was competing against. So I was just naturally competitive, and I think for the most part at the start, it was just to outdo my peers, my friends, the people I was hanging around with. But because of how talented these guys are, at some point it meant outdoing them meant becoming really good, winning tournaments, just being in the conversation of the better debaters within the circuit. So it just like yeah, I was really competitive, but maybe up until maybe a year or two ago, I never really went into tournaments with specific trophy or medal goals. It was just about like being shoulder to shoulder with my peers and competing and seeing what happens.
Well, that's a very lovely response. Thank you so much, Raymond. All right, so I've got one from a debater. Joy, would you like to answer that?
Yes, thank you so much, Imole. Okay, so me joining in debating was like a mistake. So I don't want to see your facial expression. Let me explain. It was it was year one. We're doing this whole faculty moot debate competition, and they kept, you know how they come to meet 100 level students and like, come join us. And I was like, nah, I just want to study and read my books and go home to my mom and everything. So I had this senior colleague that I was very close to, and she kept saying, Joy, you are very shy, why not just come show us what you can actually do? So I just like, let me just try. I attempted debating my first BP debating without taking lots of notes, and surprisingly, I wasn't that bad. My senior colleagues were actually very shocked that I was that bold because I was a very shy person. Okay, I looked shy then, but I didn't really talk much, and I was more of like an introvert. Um, so I did debates. My union president then, Alpha. I don't know. Most people might actually like a few people might actually know Alpha. So his son was like, "You actually very good at this. Have you done BP debating?" So I was like, "That was my first time." So he said, "Okay, you should actually continue." So that my first faculty competition, I came out as second runner up, which was actually very impressive considering like little experience I had. Then the second time was class fun BP. I had a panic attack when we were doing the elimination round. I got kicked out, and I cried myself to sleep that night. You can imagine. Then after that, I decided to continue debating because I was like, I like the feeling. I like the whole thing of I'm going to throw your argument to the dustbin of irrelevance and all of that. It sounded so nice. So I continued. Um then I decided to join my union debating like as a full-time member. I practiced a lot and joined. Then when we're going to, I think that was CUIV. Everyone close to me knows that story. Then when it was time to attend CUIV, the day to the competition, I got ditched. Like my partner like got paired up with someone else like at the last minute. Nobody gave me any explanation of why. Everybody kept telling me, oh, you are good, this and that. We just thought your partner would be better off with someone else. You know, that whole thing of it's not you, it's us, basically. That's how the whole conversation went. Then I just made up my mind that I was done with debating. And that was the first part. Then during the lockdown, I was like, maybe I should actually do something about my boredom. And I decided to join online debating, and I decided to judge because the whole thing of not being selected for CUIV kept pricking me. So I felt like I was like very bad and all of that. So I decided to judge that first time, and I broke. I met a lot of nice people. I was like, maybe I might actually be a better judge than a debater since my union members were not telling me the truth about not being selected for CUIV. I think that whole CUIV changed my perspective. I moved on from that, I think, in 2022. Like, I know. I moved on from that episode in 2022, but the second time I decided to take debate very serious was because I just wanted to prove a point and let my union members know that I don't really need them to actually grow and I can actually be a much better debater. So even though I never took up debating serious again and decided to like focus on education, I think the first time was more of a mistake and the second time was first time was more of an accident, while the second time was more of proving a point. So that's basically the reason. So thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. I don't even have the words. Oh yeah, I happen to know how far. I didn't know how like your story said. That's like really interesting because that's genuinely very interesting to me. So I'm wondering if like Richard, Ayafa, and Esther would also like to chip in a bit before I hand over to Collins.
Hello,
Uh,
can you
thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes, I can hear you. If I can see, it'd be
Also,
nice.
oh no, like I'm not somewhere I can turn on my camera.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the question is how our foreign into debate. Um, so like for me, so I was on a trip. I used to live in Lagos and I schooled in Calabar, and I was on a trip back to Lagos sometime in like first year, and uh on the trip was Faithfulness, Lenjom, VG, Duke. Yeah, and they were talking about like going to Ghana, and I figured they were also law students, right? I think I was doing diploma then. I was not like a law student proper. And they were talking a lot about like traveling, and it sounded interesting. I wanted to be a part of whatever they had going on. And then when school resumed, Faithfulness and Victor came to our classes to talk about debates. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity. I want to travel. And based on based off their conversations, rather, seemed like it was quite an interesting thing then, because like Unica was paying them and they were traveling, and I'm like, they're paying us to just travel and have fun. They're talking a lot about socials, and I'm like, okay, I want a part of it. And then I think it was Nationals time. So I was trying to get into the team. Like it was a whole hassle. I was training really hard because like they were really good. Every day I was asking, there's a guy, Gideon, he was Faithless's set. He used to stay around me, so I'll be asking him, oh, do you think I can make the team? Da da da. What do I have to do? Because I really wanted to travel, right? And I was like, yeah, you can make it, just put in a lot more work. And surprisingly, I didn't make the team, right? Which I don't know if it was weird because I feel like I was decent, right? But then, like, the niggas, surprisingly as well, the niggas in the club agreed that, okay, I was decent enough to at least make the bench or is that how they call it? Yeah, be a bench player, like just make the trip as an observer. So there was sort of like back and forth in the club. They were like, nah, this guy has to go. So that's how I ended up making the team as an observer, right? I went, I watched, I yeah, I watched, I came back and I was like, okay, maybe I can do this shit. And then I feel like LDO was my first tournament. And then I won. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not so bad, right? And then it went on from there. And I mean, once you win, it's very difficult to go back under the shadows. I couldn't go back to being. I think a lot of people stopped seeing me as a newbie. They didn't want to even give a fuck that, oh, this is just like, this is the first time this guy was actually doing it. So I feel like he put a lot of pressure on me to like deliver. So I just had to be there and be on the scene. So I feel like that was the start of my debating career. And yeah, here we are now.
I think it's really incredible that your first tournament you won your first tournament. I don't think many people have that story, and I feel like even if you did have a particular, I'm hearing that like your major goal was to travel is quite interesting. But like I feel that win definitely did, give you bigger goals to pursue, and that's amazing for you. So thank you so much, Richard. Our queen Esther Lamide, kindly share your story with us. I can't hear you if you're speaking.
Okay, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, my primary device is down, so I had to connect from another, and I don't know why my mic is not working. Um, good evening, everyone. So, okay, I think a primary reason why I got into the debate space was for self-improvement. I can be a very closed off person. I think people that are very close to me knows that. So I was in school. I think I was in 200 level, and my life was just in three places: class, hostel, church. Church was frustrating because I was attending one of these fellowships where you go to church almost every day of the week from morning to evening. And like I remember I just got frustrated, and I was leaving church that evening and I busted into tears on the road. And it was I don't even remember them clearly, but there were these two guys. They were driving the postgraduate. They were executives for the postgraduate association, and they picked me up and they calmed me down. They spoke a lot, and one of them was like, "Why not join an extracurricular activity?" And I was like, "I'm not sure." He was like, "When you were in secondary school, did you participate in any?" I said, "I used to be a debater. Like I debate at secondary school level." And they were like, Uni should have a debate union, so you should think of joining. And I was like, okay, I'll find out. And uh, I wasn't so sure about debate. I didn't want to continue something that I did in secondary school. So I decided to go for chess. It was not really my space. Chess, cramming moves, all of those. I didn't find it interesting. So with the advice from my family members and all, they're like, just try out debate. So Davida gym was around then. And what I was running from in church was what I came to meet in debate, where it was like you have to pick your academics and an extracurricular activities. Davida gym, we train from morning to evening. And you're saying you want to leave, and it's looking like you're a very unserious person. I think that was where I also met Idris. Idris was my classmate, so he was a familiar face I could relate with. I also met Mohammed. Mohammed was a year ahead of us, but these were familiar faces people have seen around. So I was relating with them, not on a very close level though. So I ended up leaving. I left. That was before COVID, I think around 2019, if I'm right. So I didn't join back until after COVID, I think 2021, that was when I came back and I was ready. And it took Toby Ogudare and Idris to keep hounding me in class. You must come for training today and all of this for me to finally make up my mind that I would get into the debate circuit. Yeah, and I'm glad I got what I wanted, because the goal for me was to have to self-expression. I realized that I was always very interested in talking about things, but a lot of times voicing it out always led to me just shutting up and let everyone talk. But that has changed drastically, and yeah, basically that's my story.
Okay, that's incredible. That's incredible. As someone that took fellowship quite seriously in school and got encouraged to debate from fellowship, it's just interesting how like people can have like completely different lived experiences. And I'm glad you came in, and I'm glad you didn't give up. So it's great that you're here now. All right, so our final person before I hand over to Collins, the very popular Amala Ita. Ayafa Tonye, what was your main goal coming into debate, and how's that been for you now?
So yeah, I want to say that the reason why I joined debate was to spread the truth about Malaya, but it's not true. The reason
Put
is,
on your camera.
guys, I'm in the dark. Like I'm in Nigeria, guys. I'm sorry, but I just get done saying it was chill whatever. Like I joined the society because I was looking for anime. Like they told me there was a guy there that had like good anime. I did end up getting the anime, but they convinced me to stay. The round wasn't so bad. I remember the first motion I did. It was a motion about reanimating dead bodies to testify in court. So like it was really decent. I don't know. I think I did 7 minutes on my first try. So like yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah. I bombed the next few rounds after, but like it was fun. But I think honestly speaking, going forward, I'm not going to lie. I just kind of just went to do tournaments because they were fun and like they were like ways of me surpassing my limits. Like just keep pushing, keep pushing. It was challenging. That was the only reason why I used to do tournaments. And I think that's probably why I'm not as active as I used to be before. So there's that. So like it's primarily for the challenge. Although the one other thing that gives me motivation to do debate tournaments is there's effective, how will I explain it? Have you There are two things. They are similar in nature, but they are slightly different. One is the feeling of when you go beyond where you thought you would go. Yeah. So 2018 LDO, 2019 PAUDC, I didn't expect to go that far in either of the tournaments. Yeah, I didn't expect to win LDO. I didn't even make selections that year for PAUDC, but they ended up helping the movement for that. So like I was just like, it's in Lagos. I'm at home. I'm not doing anything. I have some money saved up. Let me go for LDO. I transfer all my aggression there. I somehow win. Yeah. There's a feeling of being able to just defy the odds in that way as an underdog. It's amazing. Now there's the opposite of that feeling, which is where you are the person crushing underdogs and making people unhappy. You get? There's this look of despair when you knock somebody out, and even before the judge starts talking, they know they are out. Like it's a slightly different flavor, but it's also very, very, very appealing. So yeah, those are like as of right now, those are like my two biggest motivations for debating. So yeah.
I have many things to say, yeah, but like I will just keep that inside. However, what I would just say to especially debaters listening is that there's one thing you can pick from Ayafa, that you can enter a tournament and go beyond your expectations, beyond your limits. So it's not something you should not bother limiting yourself before you start, because anyone can do amazing for you. So I'm going to hand over to Collins now to ask the next question. And also to keep in time, I think like we can give our answers like in a minute, 30 seconds. That would be very much appreciated. So Collins, over to you.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Imole. I really love these stories, to be honest. Never even heard some of these before. Never would imagine that was how Olamide got into debates. Joy. I always kind of wish I had a sad backstory to my own joining debates. Maybe I would have had a more illustrious career. Who knows? But anyway, so I have questions for each of you. and I want us to get to the heart of it, right? Sorry, there's this noise at the background. These guys. Okay, so I'm just going to bring Raymond in real quick, right? So the first thing I want us to get at the heart of, and please, if you can combine, because I know most of you have experience judging, I think everybody has experience judging and speaking. So if you could combine your answers for both speakers and adjudicators, that would be nice. I think my first question is regarding fast tracking your growth, right? See, I'm with like I remember I don't think it's been, yeah, like Raymond said, it's not been very, very long he came into the circuit, right? And you notice from 2022, there's like this shift ever since like NDC, like moving forward, there's like been this shift in his career, and he's just like stacking up wins. I mean, of course, most times you lose some, you get some, but in terms of growth, right? In terms of being able to fast track that growth, let's say there's a novice speaker on this call and you want to speak to, or maybe a novice judge, right? What would you say is one of your at least one or two or three of your key practices or the ingredients that was able to help you cook up to say as to keep growing and to grow to where you are? Raymond.
Hi, Collins. Um, I hate this question because I think that the right answer to it is a little cleaner. It's practice. It's so I have friends who are debate nerds through and through. So they watch hundreds of debate rounds. They study several pages of debate materials. And I want to tell you these things and pretend that I'm like a debate nerd in that sense, but that's not the case for me. I think honestly, there's just two things that I think helped my upward trajectory. One of them was practice. So obviously, I was very lucky to get started with competitive debating during the lockdown. It means that I had several opportunities to. Basically, we're all useless during the lockdown, so there was a tournament every other weekend. There was a tournament every other weekday. So there was ample opportunity for me to involve myself in competitive debates, like in the practice. There were so many of those kinds of opportunities, and I just kept on competing and competing. And then when debates came back in person, um, I didn't stop as much as I could afford to. I traveled for tournaments. I became more and more involved within the um, university debate club. Um, I became an ever present. Every Friday, I would show up for practice. I would refuse to do anything else. I would speak, and it continuously helped me build like muscle memory. I also loved stealing people's arguments. I watched tons of other people argue and just absorbed all of the skill that they had. So that was probably one of the things that helped me a lot. It made speaking easier and easier for me, and it made it easier and easier for me to feel confident in my ability to compete with the best of the best. But I think that the second thing that was really helpful for me was momentum. um, so I can't fully describe what this means, but in football, it's form, right? So when a football player scores 5 goals in a row, then it's likely that in the next game they are going to score their sixth goal just because they feel really confident and they feel a lot of momentum. So I had this period in 2022 where it felt to me like I was really good. So I don't know if that was the reality or if the circumstances led me to believe that. So in 2022 February, we do ANUDC. I was partnered with someone from my school. There were so many excellent teams at that tournament, but in some way, every time I met them, I managed to scale through the Octo finals. I got to the quarterfinals. I remember meeting Collins and Richard. Collins may not agree that I beat him in that round, but I still knocked him out. And I got to the semifinals of ANUDC. And that was a really big nationals. I know we did the Octos and it was a big tournament. So that was a really big confidence boost for me as a person. And the next month in March, we went to Oka for NDC again. I was partnered with EJ. Again, there were so many excellent teams at that tournament. So I think that um, we didn't think about winning. We're just thinking about competing and doing our best. And a break at NDC already felt like a win for me. But again, somehow I managed to scale some of the hurdles that I faced at that tournament. I remember at the semifinals, I met Alpha and Akoride, and I hadn't beaten Akoride ever in my career before that. Akoride was like my Achilles heel up until that point. And then for some reason, I managed to scale through in that room. I think I broke first with ping pong. And then not only did I beat Akoride, he did end up breaking. So those things aligned for me And then in the final, there was a lot of drama. And then I end up winning. Again, I don't know for certain that, these are all measures of skill, but in that sequence of events over a 2 to 3 month period, so many things were happening that suggested to me that if I just go into the pitch of somehow manage, however it is, I'll fraud my way to a win. And that momentum sort of inspired a lot of confidence that sort of helped spur me. So when I moved on from those series of events, I was significantly more confident in my ability. I was significantly more comfortable competing against some of the people I feared the most, and that sort of really helped me build a base for everything else that's happened in my career since then.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's something I just want to touch on, and that part about momentum, it's important. And for anyone listening on the call who's kind of relatively new speaker, it's important to, even when you get down, I know it sounds cliche, some of this stuff, but it's important that even when you get down, even when you do good, just keep telling yourself that there's more to be achieved. A lot of these speakers, myself included, I mean, except Ayafa, who says he completed 7 minutes in his first trial. I mean, that's phenomenal. But for me, fam, I was shaky. A lot of the speakers will tell you that they struggled initially. Some of them struggled, but it's just about building the momentum. Just keep telling yourself like, if any other person can do it, sure. And you, of course, read more materials, engage, ask more questions, get more feedback. But I want to draw Richard in quickly. Yeah, it's kind of the same question, but is it different? And it's mostly about tournament prep, because I want us to build up. The other panelists, I'm going to have like a question for you that just helps us build understanding of the circuit and adjudication to not just debating. So, but for Richard, I want to ask something about tournament prep, because I know you, right? We've spoken at tournaments together. Richard was in his debate prime. I mean, still kind of says when he was in debate prime, when he wants to prep for tournament, it was crazy. I'm telling you, podcast notes, debate notes, he would have like 2 notes, like almost like a Bible, bro. It's like it was something almost religious. And he will go crush. I couldn't like keep up with that prepping style, but like he will go crush it, right? He's one, for those of you that were here in the beginning, he's won 2 LDOs, so, and a lot more, right? So I just want to ask about that, but more specifically, how do you think people can keep up with regards to news that's happening? Because motions are going to be set on maybe stuff happening around the world, some deep philosophical motions, emotions about stuff that most people don't know, right? But how do you recommend people prep for tournaments? Speakers prep, particularly speakers now, preparing for tournaments. What do you think is most effective in that regard, Richard?
Okay, yeah. First off, I think you have to want to win. I don't like losing, right? So and I also have this sort of like braggadocio about me, and I think it's maybe drawn from like the person who trained me. Like Fitness has this braggadocio aura. So, but for me, how it works was like when I brag, I'm going to do this. It sort of like put me under a lot of pressure to deliver. Because like if you call people out and you don't deliver them, you're the clown, right? So which meant like I had to like work harder, like Colin said. In 2019, like I was convinced that I was the hardest worker. I feel like I worked the hardest in Nigeria in 2019. Probably Africa. I felt like the only person who would have made me sweat was probably like Andrews, right? And that was because I worked. So like for me, how I prepped then was I had, like Colin said, I had like a notes. And I don't think anybody can even do this now because it didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense at the time. And maybe in hindsight, I don't know if I would have done that. Like I used to transcribe speeches. So I would listen to like a lot of debates, right? And I would write them out. Like I'll write them down like word for word. So when you're debating me in a room, you're not debating against Richard. You're debating you're debating some genius out there, because it was most likely not my arguments, right? And that's the thing about debates. The ideas are always similar, right? So the ideas that you can use over and over and over again if you just know how to like weaponize them. So how I prepped was I listened to a lot of these debate speeches, I wrote them down. Then Fitness used to make me listen to Casper reports. I mean, it was boring as shit. Like I used to fall asleep, but then I got the hang of it, right? Because Casper reports basically broke down like geopolitics and stuff. Then I listened to like podcasts, especially like Intelligence Squared. So then I was also listening to people debates, right? So most times when I was debating, it was like very sophisticated ideas I already got from like this podcast I listened to, right? So I listened to podcasts, I watch like live debates. I don't just watch them, I internalize them, I write them down. So it was like second nature to me at the time, right? So it was like multiple factors, right? So also I look at people that are on the panel, right? I look at the judges, right? I'm like, what's this guy going to be interested in? Like, what kind of person is he? Then whoever I'm going to be speaking with, I will tell the person, okay, you take this part. Maybe I'm not so good with this part. Let me use economics, for instance. I'll say, well, I'm not so great handling economics motion. I'm going to try to read on it, but you try to expand your knowledge based on this, right? I'm comfortable with philosophy, for instance. I'm going to expand my knowledge based on this. So that way we can sort of like come together and crystallize our knowledge. So we now have like a robust knowledge bank. So no matter where the motion was coming from, no matter the angle, we're going to be ready. So yeah, I feel like that was how I prepped for tournaments, right? By first of all understanding myself, understanding the judges, right, and also understanding like the issues that are going on in the world at the time, right? So there was a debate. I think the first time I learned that the hard way was I think it was Game of Thrones. I think that was what the tournament was called. In the finals, I feel like I was sort of like the smallest, not like smallest, but like yeah, he had like Tayo, he had Easy, he had Tafik, I think it was be. I don't think I was that grounded then, right? And then the motion was around like AFTA, that's African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think the agreement had just been passed then. And like hearing about it like that day, and I was OG, and I'm like, what the hell? I struggled a lot. Like that was the most cringe-worthy 7 minutes of my life. I wanted it to end because I begged my partner, like, just go first. It was like, nah, I can't speak first. I think it was a Kimini. So I just went there, rambled for like 7 minutes. And then so since then, before every tournament, I look at things that are happening around the world. I try to like have an idea at least of everything going on. So yeah, that's how it works basically.
All right, thank you, man. As you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, I should probably utilize these tips, resuscitate my career, go on one last marathon next year before I retire. But yeah, that was solid, man. And I've also witnessed that in real time too, as well. Especially guys, if you're again a newbie on this call, just take the advice about you and your partner deciding, okay, you study this, I would study this, so that when we come together, there's that cohesion. It's like no one is lacking. If you see any strange motion, I know that my partner has my back, that kind of thing. But let me just quickly bring Joy in because we need to focus on adjudication a little bit more. Yeah. And then I'm going to bring Olamide back into, and then Ayafa. So Joy, adjudication. Two things I want you to touch on. Right. The first thing I want you to touch on, again, Olamide, you might also talk about this from your perspective, is on fairness. Right. Because there's this perception that judges tend to be biased. Most judges don't know what they're doing. Again, still touching on prep, right? Because I've always kind of had this opinion that judges themselves too kind of need to prep, right? So in terms of all these problems that kind of exist, you don't have to talk about them in like large scale, but how do you think judges can delimit these problems that like stand out? Because you're someone who has stood out. You're someone who has proven that you're sort of unique, I would say, in a way. So when these problems exist, judges are biased, judges don't even know what the arguments are, they don't even read themselves, all these kind of statements. How do you think a judge can stand out amidst these problems, right? Joy.
Okay, so I'm going to be bringing in what I learned from Nolutando. Nolutando taught me a lot on bias, and she also taught me the aspect of prep. First of all, on the idea of bias, you need to be able to identify what your personal bias as an individual is. That's the very important thing you should note as an adjudicator. You need to actually know where you are likely going to be biased and also the extent of how your bias might actually affect the debate. How do I actually mean? For example, as a law student who would always randomly judge law debates, I tried as much as possible to actually think, how much will my knowledge of this motion or knowledge of this topic actually come in? You need to actually understand that. So if you're able to understand how your biases actually apply, it will actually help you to spread your focus so much because you understand that there's actually a lot at risk. Imagine you trying to be biased in a law debate and you're trying to explain to a medical student, this is it. So you're basically not bringing, like, you're not even trying to weigh their argument at that point. You're basically just judging based on what you know. That's when you hear judges importing a lot of facts into the debate, and speakers will be like, they didn't track the debate. It's not that they didn't track the debate, it's that their bias kind of clouded their entire weighing of the round. So Nolu will always tell you, understand what your biases are. If you know that you're this kind of person that is easily influenced by emotion, you can always work on that. How do you actually work on that? Try to judge or try to practice with various debates online, right? It then actually make you know this is what you should actually take note of, and this is what you should actually not take note of. Secondly, on the idea of bias, you also need to be able to know how much or how easily you can get influenced, right? I'm going to be talking about the familiarity with the motion and also the familiarity of the speakers themselves. So if you're not able to actually work on this, it's going to cause you a whole lot of problems, because no matter how much you try to be very effective in that round, nobody's actually going to regard that. That's when you hear things of, oh, now because she gets the idea of this thing and all of that. Sorry, my pigeon is horrible, but yeah, that's not the point. So that's actually the idea of bias. Then secondly, on prep, okay, before I bring in the prep thing, I also bring in studying. As a judge, you just don't come into a tournament without knowledge of anything. Eze would always tell me in 2020 that you are a judge, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't read. Always read, like read. As long as you are doing active debating, you have to read. Because I find it a very big problem when a debate when a judge comes into a round totally lost. Like, you should be able to have a slight idea of everything. Like, God forbid you know everything, but at least have like the slightest idea of everything. So you need to be able to read debate. Like, there's this very bad attitude of debaters these days coming to the debate with like just luck and coincidence knowledge. So you need to be able to be abreast with a whole lot of things, try to keep up with trends, try to keep up with issues, just have an idea of everything. So it's actually help you to be as fair as possible, and also helps you to reduce your bias in the debate. Then in the idea of prep, I learned this I think in 2020 lockdown 2021. In prep, it's very advisable as a judge to not think too much into emotion. That's the problem with most judges. So they end up judging the debates based on it. They end up judging and giving the win to a team that slightly leans into what slightly lean into what they were actually thinking. So as a judge, try not to read too much meaning into emotion. You are allowed to read the emotion, you're allowed to reflect on it, but please don't do that too deeply. It's going to cloud your judgment, because if a team doesn't actually debate in how you feel like, you end up seeing that team as what are you doing? And that's when you hear instances of judges giving OA, and you're placing this on, you're actually bringing in this burden in the debate, and debaters are like, but that's not the chat, that's not the conversation. So you need to actually not read too much into emotion. Just try to understand, so you know when to actually bring in your knowledge as an average reasonable voter. Yeah, I hope that actually answers your question, Collins.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you so much. That it actually does. That was thorough. I like the fact that the reminder that judges also need to prep, right? Like, don't read about wars happening in the world and stuff like that. So no, let's debate as why you. Yeah, my pitching is also terrible, but not as bad as Joy's. But yes, adjudicators also get prepped before tournaments. Do not don't over infuse your knowledge still. And on that, sometimes it's like difficult lines to draw. And I want to just bring in Olamide quickly. But Davida, I see you on the call. Thank you for joining in. For those of you that weren't here initially, Davida Paul is she's co-CA for this year's PUDC, and she's also served on the CAP for WDC as well, and a host of other achievements, right? But before that, right, still on adjudication, I want to just bring in Olamide real quick. I wanted to talk about that point about infusing your knowledge within the round, because I think Raymond and I had this issue. Yeah, we had this issue at Crawford. I can't remember exactly what the problem was, but I know that I was like, this statement this speaker made, factually, it's wrong. It's not true factually. But within the round, no one contested it. Right, within the round, no one said, "Oh, this is bad. This is wrong." But with the analysis, it's believable. But from my own knowledge, it's not a true fact. I don't want you to talk about how you weigh first of all, how you weigh arguments as an adjudicator, and also how do you deal with such an issue? Do you adjudicate it as per how the round happened? I mean, it's not like they said water is not wet. It's something that could be contested, something that could, allow to pass. But how do you speak to that idea of judges infusing the knowledge within a round, and how do you also weigh arguments? If you could just talk about that briefly. Thanks.
Okay, I am going to start by answering your second question. I think that would lead me to trying to answer the first question. So the second question about weighing debates, I think building up on what Joy said about preparing or about understanding motions, you have to understand the burden of the debates, and that's why as an adjudicator, you probably have to be very good with debate also. When you see emotion, even though you don't have to read so much into it, at least you should understand what a government team or an opposition team needs to do in order to win the debate. If emotion like this house would ban something or this house would legalize something, obviously the burden will be around the action word, that is the ban or the legalization. So someone coming to talk about whatever is being banned or legalized being good or bad or stuff like that, it might be true, it might be a lie, but it's not in line with the burden of the motion. And I think a lot of times that's what causes a lot of problem when adjudicating debates. Some teams might say something that is not necessarily true, but it's in line with the burden of the motion. If it is not contested, personally, I would let it slide. So far, it's in line with the burden, except if it's a very obvious lie that is past the average intelligent voter that makes me look stupid. That's probably something I don't buy. But if it is an argument or an analysis that it's even true, but it's not engaging the burden of the motion, there's to a very large extent, I won't weigh it up, or I don't think it should be weighed up as important as whatever engages the burden of the motion, so to speak. So that boils down to weighing, right? Because at the end of the day, when you are listening to debates, the major question is who is able to best prove the burden that they are to defend in this particular round. Did they prove it best with their analysis or argumentation? Did they prove it best with proving their impact? How exactly do they prove it? And to what extent do they prove it? I think that's weighing, basically explaining why your argumentations are important in the round and why they should be winning the debate. So a lot of times you would have teams not explicitly do it, but it will be intuitive from their argumentation. So as a judge, you have to be listening to those intuition pumps to see at what point in time are they claiming that some impacts are so important, or at what point in time are they claiming that some argumentations will do better or do worse, or whatever the case might be within the context of that motion. So two major things. I think first, you have to understand burdens as an adjudicator. Second, you have to then find the team that is best defending their burden, whether they're on the government or opposition side. Basically, that's what adjudication is about, and weighing as an adjudicator. And that also factors into if someone says something that is a truth or something that's a lie. Whether it is a truth or whether you think it's true or it's a lie, if it's not defending the burden, it's most of the time so irrelevant within that particular round, or less weighty than it should be. So it shouldn't be so much of a cause of contention. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're getting close to the end, so I'm just going to bring in David. Are you there?
Yes, hello.
All right. Yeah. Before I bring you in, I was still on adjudication, right? And there's a combination of issues I wanted to address, because one of the things I know about Davida is she speaks very succinctly. I'm sure when she speaks, you hear. For those of you who've never heard Davida speak before, it's like, I mean, if I'm in a round and I came first and I thought I came first, and Davida says I came fourth, Like, I'm just going to accept I came fourth. So just going to accept if there's anything lower than fourth, just give it to me. Because once she just delivers the OA, you're even convinced. First 2 minutes, you're convinced that what she's saying makes sense. It's succinct. It's poignant. It's gets to the heart of the issue. Right. So I do want you to talk about like delivering OAs and how to get how to, because I know that there are instances where the problem isn't the ranking, the problem is how the OA is delivered, right? And debaters complain a lot, even especially within our circuits. But beyond OAs, I also want to talk about note taking and listening, because I know you've judged a lot of top rooms across the world. I don't know if there's any continent you haven't judged in. I'm sure if there's debate unions in Antarctica, you've probably been there, right? So there's like you've judged a lot of people that have different accents, different speaking speeds, people that rap, right? Like, how do you keep track of that? So just two things, right? Note taking, how do you keep track of different speakers? And then secondly, just oral adjudication delivery. So if you could just touch on those two things. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. I can see a couple of familiar faces. It's so good to see you guys. Again, I can see a lot of new faces as well. I hope you're enjoying African debating. Collins will whine you, but don't panic. It's never that easy to give a fourth to any team, especially a team that has worked really hard. So, I would start with note taking, and then I'll proceed to OA as well. So starting with note taking, right? What's super important here is to have a mentality of appreciation and respect for the efforts of debaters in a room. And I think the healthier progression in debating is that, you've spent a couple of years debating first, and then you go on to become an adjudicator, right? And if you followed the natural progression, I think you'll be able to appreciate how much effort goes into preparing for tournaments, how much effort goes into to several prep rounds beforehand, and maybe just the consistent prep that happens during the round as well. I mean, you guys heard Richard say he has like a massive case file for each tournament, right? And I think that if you understand this simple concept of appreciating and respecting the effort of debaters in a room, it would be much easier to take detailed notes. So I think the mindset is the first thing. Appreciate and respect the effort that goes into preparing for a tournament. The second thing as well is make sure that you take notes in a way that works for you. And I'm saying this as someone who has seen different note-taking styles. You see some adjudicators divide their notes into two. Some will divide into four. Some need a separate piece of paper for each team. I personally need at least 2 to 3 A4 sheets, right? And I always just differentiate each team's arguments as well. You need to carefully consider what note-taking style works for you. Don't be pressured by anybody's, handwriting or the way that they group their ideas. Make sure that you do what works for you. Because oftentimes, if you take notes poorly, it will reflect during your OA. That's where you see judges trying to scamper for what part of the note they wrote a particular rebuttal on, what part of their notes they wrote a particular argument on. You want to avoid that by thinking about what style works for you and trying to consider what note-taking style works for you. Please, clarity is very, very important, and I need to emphasize this. Take notes in a way that you can read, that if you need to refer back to an argument that a team made, if you need to refer back to an impact, if you need to refer back to a rebuttal, it's very, very easy for you. It's very, very easy for you to do this, okay? So just signposting again. So note taking, first thing, the mindset is important. It's important that you appreciate and respect how much effort people put into preparing for tournament. That's all the motivation you need to take detailed notes. Secondly, consider what style works for you. And finally, clarity is super important. Make sure that you take notes in a way that's clear for you. There are, however, a couple of non-negotiables in note taking. Please make sure that no matter how unimportant you regard an argument or a speaker, because I've seen this in African debating. Please make sure that you take all their arguments down, that you take down all their rebuttals, that you take down all of their impacts. Even if you think personally that this makes no sense to you, it can be very, very discouraging to debaters to see judges just point out, like, getting involved in a staring competition with them while they're speaking without taking any notes. And I know some pro debaters like to do this because most of the information is stored in their head anyway. But it never really gives it, ne- it never really gives the debaters a good vibe, right? Like most debaters, if they see you're not taking notes, they walk away from that speech feeling like we've lost, right? So um please make sure that you're taking notes of everything that speakers are saying, regardless of your personal opinion on the subject. So if, for example, show you don't think you were persuaded, whatever your note-taking style is, you can cross out the arguments on your sheet of paper later. You can highlight it in red. Me, I typically put it in brackets if I think it's not properly explained. But please do not be engaging in staring contests with debaters when they're giving a speech. Okay, please make sure that you properly take notes as well. Another thing that's a universal rule, no matter what your unique your unique note taking style is that you always clearly differentiate engagement. And this is very, very tricky. I don't think it's something that I can fully analyze on this call. But I'm pretty sure all of you are good debaters to some extent, even the faces that I'm not very familiar with. So you know that, for example, if you're writing on a separate piece of paper for opening government, you need to clearly highlight what the engagements of the speakers on opening opposition are to OG. You still need to do the same thing for CG and for CO as well. Because I'm telling you, like, debaters will come and meet you at the end of the day and be like, did you hear this thing we said to their case? And you need to be able to track that in your notes, that you weren't just staring up into space, or thinking of socials and a good time at the club while they were giving their speeches. Like, you need to be able to adequately track that down. All right, then. Quickly, let's hop on to OA. And to be honest, I'm not going to spend so much time here. I think the harder work is in note taking. If you've got good notes, it's pretty easy to give an OA. And like I said, no matter how much Collins will try to whine you, um, um, don't be dismissive of teams, judges, even when you feel like your call is correct. Because not everybody takes a fourth really well. Collins does. Collins is a great guy. Not everyone's a great guy. So please make sure that you're very, very respectful when dishing out calls, right? And this is the way that disrespect often plays out. It plays out in a way that adjudicators spend little time explaining to the teams that ranked third and fourth. And then you spend so much time explaining why the team that ranked first. That's very bad. That's very dismissive. That's very respectful. Anyone who has had me give A will know that I usually spend the bulk of my time explaining why the teams that ranked fourth and third did that. I will never start with explaining why the teams that ranked first and second ranked first and second. I usually start with the team that ranked fourth, then go to third, and upwards. Please do whatever works for you, right? But just make sure that however you're going about it, please make sure that you're very respectful. You're detailing clearly while each team ranks the way that they did. This is the structure that I use. It has evolved over the years for sure. This is not me asking you to copy mine. You can do whatever works for you. But what I typically do is I start with general comments, give the general vibe of the round. If it's an amazing room, I say this was an amazing room, great speeches. I was really, really wowed, and then I go on to announce the call, I go on to disclose the verdict, and after that, I go on to highlight the key clashes in the round. Then I go on to justify my decision based on those key clashes in the round. And where time allows, I go on to give personal feedback. This doesn't have to be your style, but the key element is you must disclose the call. Some of you guys are really mean. I know adjudicators who will literally leave disclosure till after they've given the OA. I personally think that's torture. I would not advise anyone to do that. Please let teams know where they ranked at the start of your call. Don't put people's children on suspense like that. It's not a nice thing to do. So please disclose first, and then you go on to justify as well. Collins did not ask me to explain personal feedback, so I will not be doing any oversight. But I hope that this was very helpful for everyone. Thank you.
100% helpful. Just changed my life and my perspective on education and everything. Thank God this is recorded, because I mean, she said a lot of things, but the part about Collins being a great guy, I think that was very important for us to note down. More seriously though, she said that there's not everything she can say on this call. It would really be nice if we had like a spin-off, adjudicator spin-off, because there's a lot more you could learn from, especially those that focus more on adjudication on this call, like Olamide, Joy and Davida. These are people that have traveled the world, traveled around the continent, right? There's a lot more we need to learn as to what their secret really is, to be honest, what soap they are using. But that's for like another day. Probably we'll do a spin-off. Who knows? Anyway, Ayafa, now it's time for you to, as we're about to round up. One of the things I want to talk about is how you become like, you've trained people too as well. You've trained even, I think, yes, Veritas. You've trained people beyond CU Veritas, and you've impacted them positively. We've seen a lot of your students and what they've achieved. I want you to talk about a couple of tips that you think debaters are getting wrong with regards to speeches. Like maybe they copied it from I don't know where, but a couple of trends you've seen debaters do that you feel like, nah, guys, stop this. Right, just speak to the other generation. You're kind of I always say you're kind of mid old new gen. I really don't know where you are, but just that, a couple of tips. Debaters do this, and you're like, nah, guys, don't do this, stop that. But then secondly, I just want you to touch briefly on how you think that moving forward, there was going to be a conversation around toxicity in this space, but to be honest, I don't know if there's time for that anymore in the debate space. Time for that anymore. But I just want you to just first of all, talk about what you think debaters shouldn't do. But secondly, talk about how you think the next generation, the new gen of debaters, how we could impact them and what they could take away, right, from you as like a teacher or as like a coach. Yeah. So if you're still there.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with just saying like a massive shout out to a lot of the children I've trained over the years. So you might not know some of them, you might know quite a bunch of them, but like every single one of them has made me proud over the years. So yeah, massive shout out to them. Yeah, even the ones that don't like me till now, like I'm still proud of them. So yeah, I'm just going to give a bunch of thoughts on getting better as a debater. I think the first thing you need to learn is you need to be yourself when you debate. And I think the problem here is a lot of things that we do in debate are meant to be intuitive and instinctual. Honestly speaking, like most of the time that I debate now, I can do what I do, at least not to perfection, but to about 80% efficiency, not less, because I am being myself. I'm just talking the way Ayafa would talk, even if he wasn't on the mic, even if he wasn't in front of a podium. So me being myself is something that I would never find difficult to do. But if, for example, I spend so much time duplicating like the styles of my earliest coaches, massive shout out to Kachi, Bobby, the whole CLDS farm. Yeah. If I had spent so much time doing that, I would probably find a lot easier, a lot harder to sum up that energy, right? But more importantly, it places a limit on how far you can go. If you are trying to be yourself, there's no limit. You can just keep on improving your knowledge, learning more and adjusting, and you'll be the greatest ever. But if you keep on trying to copy somebody, you need to find someone that's higher than you to copy, and then the average of how well you copy that person then becomes where you stand. So you can never outgrow that person. You can't out Ayafa. You can't out Raymond. You can't out Davida. So automatically you have a massive crutch with regards to how far you can go. Now, onto more practical things. And I think there's enough time for me to insult a few people. So see, guys, for the sake of God, if you say things and you have to transcribe it like Richard does, and you look at it and it doesn't make sense on paper, you're not debating, you are rapping or doing something else. And this is a very consistent trend. Yeah. Like there are a lot of people that have this tendency now to just throw in like trigger words. And you look at the entire speech, and not much was said when it comes to logic. They just said the things that pertain or are words that you hear in emotion about that thing, and then it doesn't make sense. And this is not even a ChatGPT problem. There's ChatGPT problem on the side, but then there's also like epistemic access. You know what I'm talking about. There's ChatGPT problem on the side, but there's also you are trying to communicate, but because you are trying so hard to show everyone you are a debater, you are using debate terms, using them wrongly, using them chaos. Don't do that. Just be very clear. Have structure. I've not used epistemic access in years. You get, and like I don't think I'm losing comps. At least my trophy cabinet doesn't say I'm losing comps. So like the entire point is just be clear and have structure. Judges like that a whole lot more than using those terms. The reason why those terms were created was that they are energy efficient. Energy efficient in the sense that you can explain a concept with a lot less words, so you save time. If you don't know how to use them in an energy efficient way, or they just don't apply in that motion in an energy efficient way, just don't use them. You won't die. Honestly, you can still easily win using your regular terms, well-explained examples, and oftentimes it's refreshing to judges. I know when I hear properly explained English in a clear and calm and concise way, it appeals to me. At least if you do it, I'm inclined to not give you a fourth. So honestly speaking, like try and work on those things. Then on impacting the future generations, I would say a bunch of terms. I think I'm really happy that the circuit has become a lot less toxic. There were a lot of things that were happening in the circuit at that time, both in regards to mental health, sexism, biases, and a lot of things that were just unacceptable. But I think that something that we lost in a bit to kill that toxicity was we lost our sense of competition. And I'm not saying toxicity was a good thing, because I think these two things are mutually exclusive. Yeah. But we need to be able to filter the moments where somebody's being competitive from the moments where somebody's being toxic. So if I tell you, so for example, one of the most hilarious bets we've ever remember in debate was, I think there was an NDC where AZ and F had a bet, and then whoever won the tournament and whoever ranked lower would have to shave their head. Yeah? I don't think a situation like that is toxic. I think that they've had personal issues that could be toxic, but a situation like that is hilarious. It's competitive, but it gives a lot of people a lot of buying. Debating oftentimes is not financially rewarding, but it can be really fun when you do things like this. So I think going forward, especially because the circuit has developed, grown a lot more, has a lot more skill. We have still some significant elders. Yes, we should bring back gambling on debates, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, but what we need to do in this space right now is for the fun of it, and I think this is just for like the simplest way to get this through, is what we need to do in debate now is just to create a space where people can feel free to be themselves, be expressive, be competitive, and not feel any of those elements of themselves be suppressed. And if you're able to do that continuously, then you would see all elements of debate thrive. So when I coach my kids, I consistently encourage them to be themselves. There are parts of them I don't agree with, I'm not going to lie, but I've always said like non-interventionary, yeah? Like just let them be themselves and encourage them to be competitive. And as long as they continuously grow, I'm always going to be proud of them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Just do that and we will all reap the benefits of it. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much. I think I like the fact that he reminded us of that era where two speakers would challenge each other and be like, "Guy, meet me at this tournament. Meet me at this tournament." I've been thinking about going back for a while, but I think maybe I should try this one. At least give me a reason. But don't just if you bet on me winning a trophy, I think you just make me automatically lose. But anyway, before I hand it over to Imole, I just want to thank you guys. We're getting towards the end. If you have any questions, please indicate in the chat, right? Just say, I have a question. I have this question for this speaker, or I have a question on this topic, something like that. If there isn't, we'll just round up. Imole, are you there? If you could just take over so we get concluding
Yes.
statement.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you all so much for very interesting. I'm just going to say this, please. Let's not. If you are under 18, don't bet. Don't bet. If it's your first one you're still using, don't bet anything. Thank you. Beyond that, I think that I think anything that I want to say is also in time to some of the questions that Collins asked. I feel like this is also going to be a very, very good ending. Ayafa, that's not risk taking. We both know that's not risk taking. Um all right. So I'm going to ask two people this question, and then I'm also going to like then round up with everyone. So I'll ask one speaker and one judge. So please, just in like 1 minute, just answer this question. I'm going to be asking, I think I'd ask Esther and Raymond again. So, Raymond, in your opinion, what do you think makes a great speech? And great speech, I'm talking 80, 82, probably 85 speaks. I don't know if you had 85 speaks before. What do you think constitutes towards making a great speech in that regard? And that's from his perspective as a beta. In 1 minute, please. Then Esther, you answer that question from the perspective of a judge, please. Thank you.
That's crazy. I don't even know if I've ever had an 85, but here I am. So I think that at an 85 speech, an excellent speech should not require effort from the listener to figure out the argument you're trying to make. It has to be as simple as possible, and it has to progress. So like there are speeches where like debaters have excellent ideas, and in my experience, sometimes when it goes into deliberation, for example, the judges have to work hard to sort of bring those excellent ideas to the fore. I think that that's not my perception of what an excellent speech is. So the one metric for how I would say that the speech is excellent is that you require no effort. You don't have to take any logical leaps or like do anything else. Like the moment you hear it, it like it jumps at you that this is the different method, that this is what the debate is about, and that this is who wins. My chair used to say that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So I think that for you to be able to achieve a speech like that, you have to keep it simple. You have to have strong connections between the claims that you're making and how they affect the debate generally. I've also seen it happen severally where we have really good arguments that I can agree with, but then I cannot see why they are important in the conversation that we're having in regard to the debate. So an excellent, a debate speech sort of makes those connections themselves in the most simple and straightforward manner.
Thank you so much for that answer, Raymond. And if you're a debater listening, I hope you noted that. So if you give me Senator Pat's speech and you put 700 lingua that I have to go and check the dictionary for, it doesn't mean you're going to get 80. In fact, you might get 60. Just say. But yeah, Olamide, please, from perspective of a judge, what makes a very good speech?
Okay. I think most of what Raymond said, clarity. I really don't know how I would rank a speaker if I can't understand what you're saying in the first place. So I think being clear, it's something that I as a judge probably looks out for. Uh, Something I also would look out for in terms of speaking scores is also how best they're able to fulfill role. I think if you should look at the WDC speaker scale, you would see that every band or every of these scale have a description of what a speaker have possibly done with their speech for them to warrant a score within that scale. So was the speaker clear? Did the speaker fulfill burden? Did the speaker fulfill their role? How strategic was the speaker? How responsive or how strong were their arguments against responses? These are things that ultimately accumulate to your speaker scores, and these are things that judges looks out for. So while the rankings are majorly based on logic and weighings and comparisons, your speaker scores are always so much about your presentation, your strategy, and how you are able to fulfill your role and how your argumentations are in line with the motion. So even if you give a very brilliant speech and the argumentations were not really in line with the motion, you'll find out that you'll probably still be having kind of like a low score. So yeah, basically those are the three major things that we look out for as a judge.
Thank you so much for that response. So I think again, this is addressing, and this ties in very nicely to what Ayafa also said about being yourself. It ties into what Raymond says about being very clear. Then for your judges too, you want to know, and I'm talking generally to people preparing for tournaments here. You want to be sure that you are fulfilling your role. So you can't be coming as up whip and bringing five new matter and say your speech is very brilliant. So you have to get like very high scores or win the debate. So no, look, I know a lot of our audio debaters do not read the manual, but please have a look at it from time to time. Be yourself, be clear. And yes, so those are things that would be really helpful. Those are things you already hear what your judges want you to do, and you as a speaker should have an idea of what you should be doing well as well. So the final thing I'm going to do is now this question is going back to Joy, to Ayafa and Richard. I don't think that there's on a call anymore. So I mean, Ayafa has a very interesting goal of being in debates from the beginning. So would you say that like your goal of like the goal you set out to achieve when you joined the debate, or the goal you discovered along the way, would you say you achieved that goal? Would you say you're satisfied with where you are in the debate right now? And what would you give like a maybe a one liner, a word of advice for people coming up, people that are new, people that this LD is probably going to be their first tournament and are struggling with certain things? What would be like the advice that you would give to them? So Richard, if you don't mind, let's open with you.
Okay. I said earlier that I joined debating because I wanted to travel, but along the line, I figured that there was more to it than just traveling, right? Like I feel like, and this goes without, I'm not exaggerating, but I feel like my life would have gone really different if I didn't debate or I wasn't in the community, right? Like right from time, I used to be a very nonchalant person. Like I didn't care about a lot of things, right? I really didn't care about a lot of things. But debates sort of like, again, I don't want to sound dramatic, but debates sort of like put my life back on the track, right? It's exposed me to a new world of possibilities. I got to meet new people, got to travel, got to hear different ideas. It was like a community, it was like family, right? So if I am to tell anybody right now to join the beats, I mean it's fun. There are going to be parties, there are going to be things to look forward to, but the community is priceless. The ideas you get to exchange, the information you get to assimilate. Like when you see a debater, when you talk to a debater, you know that this person is different from like an average Joe, right? So yeah, debates changed my life basically, right? So yeah, I feel like everybody should debate, even if again, like our goals are different for debates. For some people, it's travel. For some people, it's the alcohol and debauchery at tournaments. Whatever your goal is, right? It's there. There's definitely the upside to it, the beneficial parts that your parents are going to be proud of. So yeah.
Thank you, Richard. All right, so but is Joy on the call? Joy, please, can you go next?
Okay, sure. On that, if I'm to look back at everything I've achieved, I think 2020 Joy will be so proud because I'm the kind of person that doesn't dwell on my wins. I just see it as, let's just get this done with and go on to the next one. So I am this kind of person that barely reflects on my wins. I just feel like it's modern nature or God just compensating me for those times that I kind of missed my luck and all of that. So I've tried to come to a position where I now reflect back and try to appreciate my wins. First of all, I think debaters should take it okay for the upcoming debaters. One advice I would give to you is take it easy on yourself, like give yourself grace. I remember in 2020 where I was barely just trying to fight and make a name for myself. Sometimes I would actually cry if I don't break, and it's online tournament, so you can imagine how serious I took it. Like I would cry literally. I remember when I didn't break at WDC Belgrade in 2022. I had exams the following day, and I was literally writing my law paper and shedding serious tears. My invigilator thought I was crying because the exam was hard. But no, I was crying because I didn't break in an online tournament. You can imagine that kind of situation. So learn to give yourself, I didn't fail the paper. I ended up getting an A because I transferred all the anger and pain to the exam. So give yourself as much grace as possible. Secondly, please don't be afraid to ask questions. I know we are in this circuit where most people tend to brag about their achievements and some people just try to hide in the shadows. You are not going to be seen. You are not going to get your win if you keep hiding in the shadows. Never be afraid to ask questions. Back then I would usually like record my VNs and send to Nolu or Masharia. Like those people really helped me so much in growing my career as a debate educator. So don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're very close to someone who is a really good judge and you aspire to be a very good judge, record VNs of you practicing and send to them. I had Shannon always reviewing my VM, my OAs when I record, and she always told me what I'm doing wrong and all of that. It's made me to be better. And then lastly, don't be afraid to work so hard, and don't be afraid to attend tournaments. Don't be like me who let her parents to always tell her, sit down, don't go anywhere. I think that's why I now have a lot of people not being good terms because they thought I decided not to attend tournaments. Don't be like me. Fight your parents if you have to. It's going to be very important. And you tend to actually go to new places. Nowadays, I end up traveling for tournaments. I'm like, is this what I've been missing? And as long as I've tasted the experience, I don't think I want to actually back out. I might leave debating soon, but if I'm to look back at how much I've achieved, I certainly feel so proud of myself, and I'm so glad I allowed the whole idea of not being selected to drive me to be better. So yeah, that's all I can actually say. Thank you so much.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Joy. Small word of advice: don't fight your parents too much, or just do it.
Like in my defense, I had to fight after I was done with my project. So if you can actually explain to them why you need to go for tournament, please do. I was just a coward because I was scared that daddy's girl. I was so scared. So yeah.
Please. All right, so our final person, Ayafa, please come and give people PG-13 advice. Like very friendly, not masochistic advice. Thank you. Right.
Specifically
on okay, so looking back, did you achieve your goals? To what is one thing, one of the whatever it is that you tell new debaters entering like right now, even if LDO is their first tournament, like how they should proceed?
In all honesty, I went to debate to collect anime, so I achieved that goal about I don't know, like the second meeting I went, I already collected the anime. So yeah, I've achieved my goals. But like my own personal goals of seeing people in pain and surpassing my limits, I've also achieved those ones. At least everybody here has collected from my hand at least once. So yeah, it's fine. But yeah, with regards to advice in debate, this is the best advice I can give you. When you get into, and I think this is the best advice anybody can give you, don't have fear. Like fear is going to waste your time and waste your energy. Like it has no value. And the thing is, I've seen so many debaters get into really, really good rooms because they've had phenomenal runs, and they get into the room and then they start panicking because they see names that are familiar. Yeah? You start seeing names you know, names you respect. Okay, even your coach is telling you that he can't beat this one. And now you're all of a sudden in that room and you're starting to wonder. No, don't get worried. See those rooms as a place to prove yourself that you deserve to be on that level. Because if you are competing, you want to be the very best, or at least you want to be good. And if you want to be good, the very best, you need to be able to beat those guys. So what they're giving you when you get into the room is an opportunity to prove that you can be at that level. And the truth is this here, if possible, and I wish this was possible, try and erase the memories of debaters you've met. And then if you meet them, you'll probably have a good run against them. So the first time I met Tayo, I beat him. Like Tayo is by and large at that time, at the very least, was a much, much better debater than I was. Yeah. But I didn't know who Tayo was. I'd never seen a PADC tab in my life. I just walked into the room, debated, and somehow the judges thought I won. You get? So if you mentally don't know or you don't have fear,
like you are more likely to do well in those rooms. You get. But if you go there and you start overthinking it, you're doing the math back and forth. Oh, I need to do like something super extraordinary you're going to fumble. Just go there, remind yourself, I didn't get into this room by mistake. The tab works with mathematics. There's no error there. You are there for a reason. So show up and deliver. Except you think you won the last few rounds by mistake. Then go to the round, deliver, and give your best speech. And every single time you won't regret doing that. So yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Can I just add something to that? Sorry.
Okay, sure.
Yes, so that last advice from Ayafa applies to judges as well. Okay, this also happened to me in my earlier times of adjudication. I would hear some names and I would actually panic. I remember when I judged with Ayafa in PADC 2020 where he was DCA, man made me so nervous and I tried so much to actually impress him. I ended up not breaking, but that's fine. I still ended up paying off Ayafa back because I still think I deserve to break in that tournament. And also for aspiring adjudicators, please make sure you are not scared. Go to the debate room with the intention of wanting to be the best judge you can actually be. It's totally okay if you are giving a dino a fault. They will get over it, to be very honest, but don't go into the room to actually try to impress a speaker who is a dino or a judge. You end up screwing yourself over and you end up doing a lot of mistakes that will not be acceptable. So just make sure you're trying to prove a point, as always, as I'll always say, and just try to make sure that you are actually a very good person or a very good judge in that round. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the addition, Joy. Thank you, Ayafa. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if Raymond and Olamide also have one-liners to give before I hand over back to Collins because
Someone was asking for the LDO group chat link. So can you just drop it in the message or something?
yeah, we would have some. They would drop it in the message. So, are we good?
Sorry, what exactly did you ask me? My apologies. I was busy fooling in the chat.
Okay, so I was saying that you have a one-line as well. Do you have any advice that you want to give to upcoming new beaters?
Oh, not really, just that.
Okay.
If failure is a myth, you can just do things, whatever you want to do, you're good.
That's actually pretty deep. Thank you, Raymond. So I think largely we've come to the end of it. Collins, do you have anything else to add or to ask?
Just quickly. I joke about it's a running joke about me not winning as much tournaments, but like making tons of finals and winning lots of best speaker awards, right? So when Ray says failure is a myth, right, you just kind of have to, number one, pick the positives, the little positives you get, right, and use that as fuel. Like Richard said, was it Richard? Yeah, I think it was Ayafa that said build momentum. And then additionally is I know it's very cliche. Motivational speakers say it. Everybody said it, but don't give up, for real. There's so many stories of people who just kept pushing. I'm one of them. Just keep pushing, and you get some kind of win at some point, or you get some kind of big break, right? Someone like that exemplifies this is Vincent Ajake, for instance, right? I mean, his nationals win this year was phenomenal, right? But somebody who has been pushing for a long time, trying to improve, right? Improve. And even last year for me, I almost quit debate after last year's nationals. Then I won one tournament after, won another one, and I was like, it's not that bad. So guys, don't give up. Try to build up all the positives. Look for people that inspire you. Seek advice. Like I think some people have said that on this call. That's about it, guys. See you all at LDO.
See you at LDO. Thank you so much for being a part of
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Raymond, I beg send transport to make I use come.
Send the answer to my DM. I'll see
Right
what
to you, right to you, right to
Raymond, should I
you.
send my answer too?
all of you. Send your answer. Don't worry.
Yeah, now,
Thank you,
later,
guys.
yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye, guys. My phone is on 5%, guys.